rest since those summer days among the fields of barley. See the children run as the sun goes down, as you lie in fields of gold.
I would want my epitaph to say, Eddie Basha, he was a good man but a bad boy, and that's how I want to be remembered. The Basha family first came to the United States in 1884. My great-grandfather was a man by the name of Tanous and came to New York, as many Lebanese did when those waves of immigration took place. And he opened an import-export business. And he sent for his oldest son, whose name was Najib Basha. And my grandparents came to Arizona in 1910 to the mining towns of Ray, Sonora. They were merchants. And it was there in 1911 that my father was born, the year before statehood. When my family moved to Chandler in 1919, my grandfather built a store in Chandler, but he was really never successful. Times were always tough. In fact, in 1932, when my grandfather died, my dad told a story oftentimes that they had to wait for the settlement of some insurance policy in order to resolve the funeral costs of my grandfather. It was really my dad and my uncle who began the company in 1932, and our family was very close-knit. We all lived together, and everybody worked. We grew up in this, I always call it the guild mentality. And I knew early on that this is the footsteps that I wanted to follow. And I did. My uncle dictated that I start working at age 11, something I couldn't believe. I mean, I really thought he was a czar, and a very unfair czar. I started. I never stopped. I used to come out here and cashier at the store here in Chandler store. I was a stocker and a courtesy clerk, and I just decided that I wanted to have a facility for everything that we did. I was working 40, 50 hours a week, and I was getting 60 cents an hour. And I want to tell you something. Getting the first paycheck for me was a quantum leap in self-esteem. I mean, that was an accomplishment. And all throughout that time I was working, getting that paycheck and cashing that check and putting the money in the bank. In essence, I was able to pay for the first 2 years of my university tuition, room and board, or by working. The one thing that I never accomplished was learning how to back up a semi. I could never back up a semi in a space with about 18 to 24 inches on each side. It was, for some reason, the thing would never work for me. I know it was frustrating. I didn't choose the university that I attended. My dad chose it for me. He wanted me to go to Stanford University, but I didn't like it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't like it. And I told my mother that I wanted to come home, and well, my Aunt Zelma was like my second mother. So I called her seeking some succor and some aid and some compassion. And she very candidly told me on the phone, and almost in a mean-spirited way I thought at the time, she says, you know the problem with you is that you were a big fish in a little pond, and now you're a little fish in a big pond and you can't take it. God, she made me so mad. I hung up the phone. But you know, after I hung up the phone, I realized that she was right. And from then on, there was a marked change. And I thought at one time that I wanted to go into education, maybe to be a teacher. Probably would have been a very poor one. But then my Uncle Ike, my dad's partner, died in 1958 when I was a junior at Stanford, and I came home for the funeral and proceeded to tell my dad that I would be quitting school to go to work. And he reminded me who was the boss, and he told me that on no uncertain terms was I to quit, that I would get my degree. He was a great teacher. When I was a freshman at Stanford, I wanted to go to a football game in Southern California, and I asked my dad if I could fly down. He said, "Sure, I'll pick you up." I said, "My roommate's coming with me. He lives in Pasadena." "Fine," he says. So Dad met us at the airport in Los Angeles, and I got off the plane, and, "Hi, Dad, how are you?" Shook his hand. That night he called me in. He said, "You know, son," he said, "I want to tell you something." He says, "You embarrassed me today." He says, "You didn't kiss me." He said, "Till the day my dad died," he said, "I kissed him every day, every time I saw him." He says, "I don't want you to be embarrassed to ever kiss me." And I tell that because it's a kind of an atonement for me, because it hurt me that I hurt my dad so much. But I imbued that thought in my own sons. Until this day, one of the very neat things about working in this office is that I have 4 of my sons here, and they all come up and they kiss me. You know, when I see them, and embrace and hug. It's a wonderful thing. I graduated in 1959, and I became president very unexpectedly when my dad died in 1968. He was a very young man. He was 57 years old, and he was an incredible teacher. And his spirit and the spirit of my entire family who are deceased live in me. And I tried to continue on as they would want me to be. So when you ask why Basha's is a company so engaged in the community, we do it because of the spirit of my family. It's a remarkable spirit. It's a remarkable legacy. I'm just privileged and proud that I can carry on in their tradition. You look around you, this museum where we're sitting, or this is the Zelma Basha Selmary Museum of Western Americana, Native American art. She was a great teacher for me, a great mentor, a great inspiration. Basha's expansion outside of the valley actually began in Sedona, and it was a consequence of my friend Rick Benson and I going to Sedona almost every other week to see Joe Beeler and Jim Reynolds and the other artists that lived there, and just to enjoy the ambiance of Sedona. It's just a beautiful community. And I became so attracted to Sedona, I decided that I wanted to build a store there. And so that really became our first out-of-valley store. But now we're in all 15 counties. We at Basha's being an Arizona company, and I think this holds true for most Arizona companies, is that we look at the citizens of Arizona as our stakeholders. And we're concerned about the stakeholders, the people who reside in the communities where we have stores. So I think we have a greater investment, a greater concern for Arizona, for the communities, for the citizens. I first began in public education in 1968, being involved in public education both at the local board level and then at the state board level and the Board of Regents, and understanding as a businessman this synthesis, if you will, this symbiotic relation between education, business, prosperity. I became very frustrated with the lack of commitment, the lack of investment in education in our state. At one time, 80% of the people enrolled in our prisons had less than a high school education. And all this is a cost to the taxpayer. Well, I felt that it was time that we begin to invest to develop a policy and a program and a political ideology that invested in human capital, that expanded our transportation system, that provided for prosperity and growth. And that's what prompted me to run for governor. And although we lost the race to Mr. Symington, I think that was the battle, but I think we won the war. As we look at what has taken place, I think that we played maybe a small role, and maybe an important role, let history decide, in educating the public to the importance of education and prosperity and growth and quality of life. They're all interrelated. You can't divorce them. I realized that history was made when my family came to Arizona in 1910. And what we're doing in a real sense with me, my opinion, is we are commemorating a family that came to America to make a better life for itself, and in so doing made a better life for a whole host of other people. And I am just so honored and privileged that I have that opportunity to continue in the spirit of my grandfather and my father and mother and my aunts and all who helped make the Basha family what it is. My only prayer is that my sons will continue in my footsteps when I'm gone and exceed what little I've achieved and accomplished under my watch.
See the children run as the sun goes down among the fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arizona history maker Eddie Basha.